Good afternoon. We are super excited that you are all with us this afternoon as we begin to present to you, describe for you, and invite you to participate in a tremendous ministry opportunity for our faith houses, and certainly the panelists will explain much more in depth than I, but it is truly significant that we are meeting here at the First United Methodist Church in its 175th year. At the same time, as I prepare to bring up the Reverend Jasmine Smothers, who happens to also be the first woman, the first African American, and the youngest lead pastor in those 175 years. And yes, amen.
Good afternoon. Oh, you can do better than that. Good afternoon. The psalmist said, I was glad when he said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord, for you will find peace and joy and happiness and a great reward. We are so grateful to welcome you to this house of worship called Atlanta First United Methodist Church. We are excited about the possibilities that lie before us. And we are most excited about how the faith-based community can help our 61st mayor deliver on affordable housing in the city of Atlanta. Amen. We want you to know that you are always welcome here at Atlanta First. We exist to worship God, to serve people, to grow together, to engage the city of Atlanta and beyond. And this is the city's opportunity and the city's place to come together, to learn, to grow, and to move the city forward in the days ahead. Let us pray together as we begin this journey. Gracious and loving God, God of our weary years and God of our silent tears, God of faith-based communities and God of people who feel as if faith just can't cut it for them, God of Ahmaud Arbery, and God of the McMichaels. God who gives us strength and grace and mercy, and God who holds us accountable for the work of building God's people up. Now, Lord, have your way in this place. Bring a fresh anointing and a fresh fire to all of those who seek to enter into affordable housing, oh God, and show us the impossible, because you are the God who makes all things possible. So, Holy Spirit, have your way in this place, and we will be ever so careful to give you all the honor, all the glory, and all the praise. It is in Jesus Christ's name that we pray. Amen. It is my joy and privilege to welcome this morning to this historic pulpit our 61st mayor, my mayor of the city of Atlanta, Mayor Andre Dickens.
Wow. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. It is good to be in the house of the Lord one more time. Thank you, Reverend Jasmine Smothers. Give her a round of applause once again. I've been mayor 50 days today. Today is my 50th day as mayor, And I conceal emotions because this job is a 6, 7 a.m. they pick me up. About 10, 11 they take me back home. 10, 11 on the other side of the clock, p.m. And my history in affordable housing, this matters a lot to me. I'm a deacon of a church. That matters a lot to me. Today is the day that Ahmaud Arbery was killed checking out a house. We're in Peace Week because I called it Peace Week this week. This is our first Peace Week in the city of Atlanta. Pardon me, Reverend Smothers, for taking my time a little bit. Sometimes things just hit you a different way. I want this to happen. I want us to build and preserve 20,000 units of affordable housing over the next 8 years because we need it. We need more. We need a lot more, but we have to do it. And the faith community can do 10%, which is your tithe, 2,000 of those units. This is Peace Week because I want to make sure that the violence, the injustice, the issues of disunity go away, and for us to really see ourselves as one community, one city with one bright future, which is why we dealt with the Buckhead City movement. We deal with all kinds of things as they come because we gotta come together. And so I thought it a good idea that all of the land that is possessed by the faith leaders, the faith community, that land is sometimes underutilized. And I know your heart and I know your mission is to serve the least, the less, and the lost, and serve everybody. And one way to serve is to utilize that land to build affordable housing for seniors, for low-income people, for folks that are experiencing homelessness. And so today we announced a big donation, a grant from Wells Fargo just a minute ago that'll be helped and managed by Enterprise. And we're going to talk through that today. How do you utilize these assets and go forward and utilize that land? But every major city in America is struggling with affordable housing right now. The system just isn't working for so many families. But what's happened is these housing prices have risen so much that it's driving people out of the range of average working residents. That means something's wrong. The majority of new housing units cost more than $1,500 per month. That's $18,000 a year just for housing. And we're still grappling with trying to get a $15 minimum wage. In the city of Atlanta 4 years ago, I brought us up to $15 minimum wage for city employees, but we have a state government that won't allow us to have a minimum wage for the whole state. So when you pay $18,000 a year on your housing, you have a challenge, your cost burden, and y'all know this. Injecting the faith-based community into this could be a godsend, pardon the pun. This could be so impactful for cities just like ours. And so we've brought all of you together to learn how to do this in a way that makes sense from your bottom line while helping meet our affordable housing goals. I want you to learn a lot today. Take it back to your trustees, your leadership, and others that understand the math of your properties, the assets, but I also want you to build connections and relationships. Invest Atlanta is in here. Atlanta Housing is in here, Enterprise, the state leaders, DCA, and so many others that we would need. My pastor, who now serves on my team in the mayor's office, is here, Reverend Sean Smith, who is going to be your moderator. Get used to seeing him. He's playing a role that is very important to interact with clergy. And so throughout the day, you will learn the ins and outs of making the most of your vacant and unused land. And again, I'm just thankful that the things I believe in, I'm able to really work hard on right now. I believe in the institution of the church, and to be standing in a 175-year-old church with the youngest, first African-American female leadership here that has plans to build affordable housing on Peachtree. And I must say that it does my heart good that the sadness that I feel for the loss of life of Ahmaud Arbery as he was going to see a house, it's not lost on me that we're talking about how to build homes on God's property. Amen.
Not quite as tall as the mayor, but I think my mouth is bigger, so I will just, but we are now moving a little closer to the meat and potatoes. I know that oftentimes when big initiatives are announced, we have very lofty ideas, and quite frankly, sometimes the language is just so high, the bar seems so high and unachievable, which is why I applaud the mayor and the city with their plan to bring it closer, particularly for the faith community, to bring it closer, that we can grab it, and we can play with it, and we too can build. And so Timothy Block from the Enterprise Community Partners will come, followed by Elena Green from Central Atlanta Progress, and then David Arnold from Invest Atlanta will all come and begin the interpretation process in teaching us how we can access the grand plan that we just heard about. Timothy.
Thank you, Reverend Smith, and thank you, Mayor Dickens and the faith community for allowing me to be here today to speak on the subject, empowering faith-based organizations to pursue affordable housing. When you think of faith-based organizations like churches, synagogues, or temples, you probably think about how they provide spiritual connection and a sense of community for their attendees. Many also provide a variety of services, as you well know, such as food pantries, childcare, and even other community resources. It is very apparent that houses of worship have a role to play in the stability and prosperity of their communities that they serve, and there's more that they can do to maximize the benefits that they bring. If I can get this to work. However, before I discuss how we can maximize the benefits that faith-based organizations bring to their communities, I want to do a very brief commercial on Enterprise Community Partners for those of you who aren't already familiar with who we are. We are a national nonprofit housing intermediary bringing capital, policy, and solutions to markets across the country, supporting community development and affordable housing. To achieve impact, we've established 3 pillars in our most recent strategic plan, which are advancing racial equity and upward mobility, to counter the legacy of racially and ethnically discriminatory housing policies and practices, and to forge partnerships to improve outcomes for low-income families and households. Second, to increase housing supply. We aim to promote housing stability and racial equity by investing in and advocating for the preservation and production of quality housing that is affordable to low and moderate income people. And finally, build resilience and well-being. By strengthening the ability of people and places to prepare for and recover from instability caused by climate, health, economic, and other events, recognizing that the disproportionate effect on communities of color is great. My colleague David Bowers, who oversees our Mid-Atlantic office, often tells the story of how Enterprise Community Partners was founded over 40 years ago out of a faith-based encounter. So the story goes that Jim Rouse, one of the most successful real estate developers in American history, was approached one day by 3 women from his church with the idea of rehabilitating 2 of the worst apartment buildings in their Adams Morgan neighborhood of Washington, D.C., in order to provide low-income housing for families. Mr. Rouse, being the shrewd and seasoned developer, did what all good developers do. He ran the numbers and let the women know that their ideal just didn't pencil out financially because they didn't own the property. Not taking no for an answer, the 3 women did just what smart, dedicated, determined women of God do. They just went and bought the building and raised the money to buy the building and came back to Mr. Ross and said, now what? From that, Enterprise was launched with a mission to provide affordable housing for people to live with dignity. One of the barriers to the production of affordable housing is the high cost of land. I think Mayor Dickens mentioned that. Houses of worship putting land into a deal for free or even at a discount helps to lower the cost of development and aligns with a congregation's mission. Their land becomes a powerful tool for creating affordable homes in communities that need it most. Houses of worship control tens of thousands of acres of land, often in high-value metro areas where rents are skyrocketing, like the mayor said, and the demand for more affordable housing is very acute. Faith-based organizations interested in repurposing their property has been influenced by a number of recent factors, including declining religious service attendance at their churches and rising maintenance costs. These changes have been pushing more and more congregations and houses of faith to consider repurposing or downsizing their real estate portfolio by either entering joint venture partnerships that you'll hear about later today, or offering the lease of their underutilized and vacant land to mission-driven developers who can create affordable housing and community serving facilities on that property. With all this in mind, Enterprise Community Partners has developed its Faith-Based Development Initiative, or FBDI for short. Since 2006, Enterprise's FBDI has partnered with faith leaders to give them the tools that they need to make informed decisions on how to navigate the development process. We help faith-based organizations make the critical go or no-go decision, and if they do decide to go forward, we provide them with technical and financial resources to ensure that houses of worship are making smart moves for their congregations and their communities. Our partnership in the Mid-Atlantic region has yielded over 1,500 affordable homes and 1 community-based health clinic, with more than 1,000 additional homes in the pipeline for development. The work in the Mid-Atlantic office has also led to the creation of a successful model and generated interest from other faith-based organizations and cities within Enterprise's footprint to partner on a proven program. Now with $8.5 million in support from the Wells Fargo Foundation that we just announced right before this convening, we're ready to go national with the Faith-Based Development Initiative. As we expand the program nationwide, we'll be looking at a total of 4,800 new affordable homes over a 5-year period in communities that are in desperate need of that investment. Atlanta will be the starting point for this effort. And over 5 years, we'll work with 15 faith-based organizations to create some 1,000 affordable homes. Faith-based organizations partnering in the FBDI will have in the FBDI Technical Cohort program, will gain access to funding. We have support for market and feasibility studies and the early pre-development activities that the mayor mentioned. And we will provide virtual and in-person trainings to help participants understand the ins and outs of the development process. We'll also provide one-on-one technical assistance. The way that the technical assistant cohort is structured is that there is a call for applications that will be issued later this year in Q2. The format will include both in-person convenings and virtual convenings. We'll have high-level webinars that all houses of worship will be able to participate in, regardless of whether or not you're in the actual cohort. And then the cohort itself will be a 6 to 7 month program where we'll have deep dive sessions, we'll have breakouts, and we'll have up to 5 hours, which is the most critical part, up to 5 hours per month of one-on-one technical assistance. The cohort closing convening will consist of a Shark Tank type model where House of Worship who have went through the cohort will have the opportunity to pitch their projects, if they're far enough along, to funding sources like House ATL and the Funders Collective that Enterprise oversees. There's a very comprehensive and robust curriculum that is covered during the cohort process, which includes these elements that you see on the screen. But in a nutshell, we're really trying to walk them through everything from start to finish that they need to know about how to undergo affordable housing development and community facilities. You can see here on the screen that House of Worship have already been engaged and have expressed interest in exploring development opportunities and in the potential cohort that we're launching. I want to be very clear, though, that the churches that you see here, no final decisions have been made yet. There is an application process, and it's not just limited to these churches here. And with that, I want to thank everyone for allowing me to share a little bit about our faith-based development initiative. If you have questions, if you want to know more about how to access the application, my contact information didn't make this slide. It's a different version of it, but you can see me afterwards, and I can give you my contact information. Again, thank you, Mayor Dickens, for allowing Enterprise to be a part of today's convening. And we look forward to partnering with you in the future. Thank you.
I have to apologize. I am over 50, and I didn't bring all my equipment the first time. But that's Dawn Arnold from Invest Atlanta. That will be coming up.
Good afternoon. Thank you again, Mayor Dickens and Reverend Smothers and the whole Atlanta First family here for their hospitality. And for the city of Atlanta for all their hard work in pulling together this important conversation. It's so great to see faces in seats and be back in person with you all today. I hope this is the first in a series of meetings and opportunities we have together. As Reverend Smith shared, I'm Elena Green, Director of Economic Development for Central Atlanta Progress. We are a nonprofit organization here in downtown Atlanta, really focused on making downtown a more vibrant, a more equitable, a more thriving heart of our city. And we do this by working alongside of both the private and the public sector to carry out community programming, outreach, advocacy, and even lending some direct support to many of our landowning stakeholders in the neighborhood. And I want to speak with you all today along this theme of the power of partnerships. Mayor Dickens has shared a bold vision for more affordable housing that's needed in the city, and we all know that we cannot achieve our goals. Maybe we can, but we cannot achieve them as quickly as we need to if we don't do it together and through partnerships. And I want to share some learnings from a partnership that we launched back in 2019 with the help of our friends at Invest Atlanta that have enabled several of our faith-based landowners here in downtown to advance the very plans for affordable housing on this site that you'll hear more about today. So a little bit more about the partnership. We launched this back in 2019, and our organization teamed up with Invest Atlanta to launch the Sweet Auburn Pre-Development and Technical Assistance Fund. This was a unique partnership that really provided that direct technical assistance that you heard Tim talk about earlier as a way to help our faith-based and mission-based owners navigate the development process. Many of our faith leaders wake up every day with a different set of problems to solve than myself, and real estate not maybe being the top of that list. And so this program was really designed and intended to provide those wraparound technical services for our faith-based community. We vetted several providers that really go into that development process, be it an architect or a surveyor, any real estate advisory firm, and then worked directly with these sites to create the scopes of work and the support that that specific property would need. And then from there, our organization worked alongside of those owners to manage the scope of work to ensure that the deliverables were exactly what our owners needed, again, in service to providing a more competitive project for many of the funding sources you will hear about later today. So since inception, I'm really proud of this impact. It's been a 2.5-year program. We have provided, with the generous support of Invest Atlanta, over $1.7 million in grant funding to 20 different sites in the Sweet Auburn neighborhood, which is supporting about $400 million of new development in our downtown, over 500 units of housing in the pipeline, and 3,000 hours of technical assistance provided to our community. We've helped a number of these owners secure financing for their projects. We've assisted 6 particular projects that have made their way to Invest Atlanta for more Eastside TAD, Tax Allocation District funding, which you'll hear about shortly. And our work continues with the rest of the owners to get them in a similar position. This slide here is just a drawing of some of the projects that we worked on through this program. You can tell by the graphic the adjacencies of many of these landowners and opportunities, really reinvigorating a historic district again with housing and other community-serving needs. And just wanted to highlight a couple of these projects and some of the renderings and vision for what we hope these sites become. A lot of these owners are longstanding owners in the neighborhood and are really re-envisioning their sites to add, again, affordable housing, community-serving uses, and ground floor retail that reinvigorate a community from the ground floor up. So all that to say is, what have we learned? It's been 2 years. And I want to share 4 key takeaways that I hope will spark some reflections for you all as your congregation considers a similar endeavor. The first is this work takes time. It takes resources, and I've been awed by the servant leaders I have gotten to work with in the churches over the last number of years and their diligence on many of these matters. But it does take time. It takes dedicated volunteers to ensure and see this work through. It also takes, oops, sorry, Dawn. Let's see. It also takes treasure and an understanding of what your treasure is as a church, as a house of worship, the assets you bring to any conversation with a partner, and what you are hoping to get out of that engagement. Thirdly, technical assistance. Tim mentioned this in his remarks, but community building cannot happen in a vacuum, and you will need to lean on the help of technical experts and providers throughout the development process, and ideally with someone that can help manage that process and help demystify the many components of a development process with the church and its congregation. And we hope some of the resources you hear about today can serve that very need. And lastly, and I would say most importantly, is trust. Again, because this work takes time, it also takes time to build that trust, and it is of utmost importance that you find a partner as you endeavor on this mission that you trust and that believes in your vision as well. This is so essential, and we all, as providers, as intermediaries, have to be willing to move at that speed of trust. So with that, I thank you for your time today. Again, thank you, Mayor Dickens, for pulling this conversation together. I will be around through the end of the meeting today and happy to answer any questions. Appreciate you all being willing to show up today and think boldly and think compassionately about the resources of your church. And I hope you will consider the power of partnerships in this work. Thank you.
I was testing to see how my voice carries in the pulpit in case the mic goes out. I generally don't need a mic, so we'll leave it at that. But good morning. Good afternoon. I'm so excited to see everyone here today, and I just, Mayor Dickens almost brought me to tears, which never really helps when you have to speak, when you start thinking about just kind of where we are as a society. So I just want to take a couple of minutes of personal privilege, just think about what it is, and you can do that when your boss isn't here. So just bear with me for a while. But you think about the work that we do and how hard this work is. And I always think about something that my good friend Terry Lee told me a long time ago, that the work that we do is not about man, but it's about God. And when you've been in government as long as I have, 26 years, those years are more like dog years. For every year, it equates to about 7 years of life. And so when I think about how long I've been doing this work, I can't help but to reflect on not only what my mom taught me, but what we learned at Spelman College. And so when I look at my sister and my Spelman sister and my natural sister, I can't help but to think about why we do what we do and the people that we're serving. Again, this is God's work, and it's hard work, but it is so beneficial, and it is so community-oriented. I laugh because Mayor Dickens he's always modest about his passion for affordable housing. And as someone who first dealt with Mayor Dickens on our board of directors at Invest Atlanta when he was a council member, who didn't know a lot about affordable housing, but just had this desire to learn about it. And it felt like 20 years, but it was probably more like 4 years. We went on this tour around the city, talking to developers, trying to encourage them to really think about affordable housing. We're talking market rate developers that may not necessarily have the mission in mind, but they know that there's a need and they know that they have the ability to fill that need, but may not always do it from their heart, but may need a little nudge every now and then. And so for about 4 years, we went on a mission talking to various people about the need for inclusionary zoning, mandatory inclusionary zoning, where developers didn't really have a choice. They'd had no choice but to build affordable housing if they were going to develop in the city of Atlanta. And we learned a lot. Developers taught us a lot. And so a lot of the programs that I'm going to talk about are really those lessons that we learned, ways that we can entice developers to really think about affordable housing and to take some of the financial risk out of that. And so I'm going to skip a lot of slides because, again, you have some privilege when your boss isn't here. And so I'm not going to do a big spiel about Invest Atlanta. What I will say about Invest Atlanta is the fact that we love what we do. People, sometimes I feel a little afraid to walk to my car because people always talk about Invest Atlanta in terms of money. And so people think, I guess, that I have it in my purse somewhere. And I don't. I don't. And so, I'm oftentimes approached in parking lots about, I heard about this new program that Invest Atlanta has. So outside of being a funding source, we really spend a lot of time really thinking through what's really needed. And so what we're going to talk about today is just going to be some resources that we have kind of put together. Elena talked about the fact that we participated in the pre-development work and along with CAP to really help those businesses and organizations in the Sweet Auburn district. And that was something that really came through our engagement with the public. We talked to many of the people that lived in the neighborhoods and many of the businesses and organizations, and they felt like they did not necessarily have the skills to really compete with the big developers. They just didn't. They had the passion, they had the desire, but they did not have, you know, the balance sheet. They didn't have the resources that were needed, and so, or the technical expertise. And so we created this program. But I would be remiss if I didn't recognize a couple members of my team, Vicki Roberts and Michelle Lewis. And these are my affordable housing road dogs. They go everywhere with me talking about affordable housing because they love it and they're passionate about it. Vicki is the one that actually controls all these programs. So everything I hear today, talk about today, Vicki Roberts is the one that oversees these programs. So, I love you guys. They are passionate about the work, and their passion shows in everything that they do. So thank you all for coming today. So I'm gonna skip a couple of slides. And Terry, a couple of these slides was really focused on. And so do you all know Terry Lee? Terry, stand up. Terry was the, she was, so for those that may not know Terry Lee, and I don't know who you may have been on a rock somewhere, but in case you don't know Terry Lee, she is the city of Atlanta's, she was the city of Atlanta's first chief housing officer, and just did tremendous work. And a lot of the programming that you see came out of a study that was done that was passed by City Council. And thank you, now Mayor, then City Council Member Dickens, for really recognizing the importance of this plan. But one of the things, and I said I was going to skip a lot of this, but that plan that I talked about, that I was talking about, really, Dawn is not following any directions. Reverend Smothers, I did listen to you when you gave me that lesson on this. So this plan really talks a lot about just the commitment that the city of Atlanta is really making towards affordable housing, and just really high level. It talks about 4 different things that we're trying to do, but more importantly, the numbers mean a lot. I mean, you know, Mayor Dickens talked about 20,000 units of affordable housing and what that really means. And so we are trying to chip away at that, considering that we think that it's probably a need closer to 75,000 units of affordable housing in the city of Atlanta. And so one of the things that we recognize as a challenge is land. Hence why we love you all so much. And so Mayor Dickens talked about a 10% of that 20,000. I'm gonna raise you a little. I'm gonna raise you, so maybe about 15 to 20% of that 20,000 unit. But suffice it to say that, you know, the goal was really about $1 billion in affordable housing, and we have been able to, from a government perspective, deploy about $750 million. And not necessarily, we don't necessarily know the number for the private side, but we did make a deal with the private sector. We said, you know, government will contribute $500 million. Private sector, can you also match what we have? And so we believe in matching. And so we are anxiously awaiting our private sector partners, and they have been great partners in helping to raise money that we as government cannot raise, and so we are thankful for that. But another part of that, in addition to the 20,000 units and the $1 billion raise, was really about being smart about how we grow in the city of Atlanta. And everybody knows that it is no secret that by the year 2050, we're expected to have, within the city limits of Atlanta, 1.3 million people living in our city. We currently have about 500,000. So just think about that math. And so it's important that we grow smart. And a big part of the plan really talked about mitigating displacement. And then the last part is really about innovation and streamlining. And Josh and his team have done a tremendous job with the Housing Innovation Lab and some work that they're doing around zoning, so we are thankful for that. And so now here's the part where everybody says, just show me the money, Dawn. Thank you for all just show me the money. And so these are really about 6 of our programs, and these are programs that we have specifically for affordable housing, but they also provide a mechanism for financing this work. And you all don't have to write feverishly about what I'm gonna tell you, because it's gonna be too much information. I'm gonna give it to you too fast. But Josh did promise that we will have another session strictly focused on these tools and incentive and how we layer them and how we make them. So today is very high level. And you can also have this presentation as well. And anything I'm saying can be found on our website. So if you wanna have a good read before you go to sleep tonight, then go to our website. But these are 6 programs that we have, and these are kind of our bread and butter programs. But I want to highlight the second program, Housing Opportunity Bond, because through the great work of Terry Lee and Mayor Dickens, we were able last year to close on about $100 million of bonding capacity, of funding that will be available for affordable housing. And we are anxiously spending that money, and it is available. And so I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 programs that is coming, that we have, that comes directly from that allocation. But beyond the funding, what this initiative shows is the city's commitment to affordable housing. The city is paying 100% of the debt service on this $100 million. And so we're able to use this money to inject in projects, and we can amortize those loans for 45 years if we need to. And so it's patient capital. It's money that we can actually deploy to help incentivize the affordable housing and also to fill the gaps. But we wouldn't be able to do that if we had to pay this funding back within a 3, 5, 10-year period. And so because the city of Atlanta made the commitment to pay the debt service on this $100 million, we're able to take full advantage of that. And then you'll hear a little bit about some programs that are geographically targeted. And that's, you may have heard earlier with Elena talking about the fact that we have TADs, Tax Allocation Districts. We have 10 of them throughout the city. So there's some special funding that's tied to developments that happen in those areas. Of course, the Vine City Trust Fund is geographically restricted to Vine City. But of course, there are some things that we took from those pages of that trust fund, and we deployed in other ways. And then lease purchase bonds, that is an incentive that we provide on the back end. It is a tax incentive, and my counsel would be excited that I said tax incentive instead of tax abatement. But it's a tax incentive that we provide, and it helps really with the operational side, and it helps to really help pencil your deals when you are trying to get banks to participate, and you have to show them certain types of ratios. And then last but not least is Atlanta Beltline tax increment financing. And this is a special fund that we've set up for Beltline in particular, but it is all the additional increment that is generated from the Beltline. This is all, 75% of all the additional increment that is generated goes towards affordable housing. And so we built up a nice little stash there. Again, the programs are geographically restricted, but do provide a revenue source and a funding source for projects. And so the next slide really goes into all the things that you probably just could not absorb today, but all just each program individually and the nuance of those programs. But I didn't talk much about our tax exempt bond program, and I didn't talk a lot about that on purpose because we are 2 years of backlog with our deals, but suffice it to say, through the great work of Vicki and her relationships, we hope to be able to change that time frame from 2 years to 2 months. Vicki, no pressure, no pressure. But this is our biggest tool. This is a tool that is not necessarily like the other tools that provide gap financing, but this is a first mortgage tool, and quite honestly, you could use this tool to finance 100% of your deal if your numbers pencil out. And so along with this particular incentive, which is done through a really complicated internal revenue source of funding that none of you all really care or want to hear about, but it allows us to be able to couple what we call low-income housing tax credits. Simply put, money, free money with this incentive. And that free money probably could provide anywhere from 25 to 30% of your development costs in the form of equity. And so that is the benefit of using the tax-exempt bonds. We get about $95 million a year in authority, and that is based on a per capita amount, and we use that authority to fund projects throughout the city. The next three programs are, again, from housing opportunity bonds. We have one that's focused on large-scale multifamily, 70 units or more. And we have some that are focused on small-scale multifamily, 70 units and less. And so they both do something a little bit different. For the small multifamily deals, we provide a little bit more because it's oftentimes you can't use our taxes and bond financing with it because it just doesn't make sense financially for you. And so we try to provide a little bit more for that particular program. Both of those programs, we have a special, some special regulations for nonprofits. And so as, you know, as churches, I would hope that you have a nonprofit arm and that you are nonprofits, which 99.99% of churches are. And so we do have special carve-outs that allow for a much less interest rate and also additional funding in both of those. And then the last one is really about permanent supportive housing. We are very intentional, and we all see the homeless crisis that we're facing in our city, and so we want to provide a mechanism to encourage people to provide permanent housing for individuals that are now on our streets. And so we have a special carve out for permanent supportive housing, and so to the extent that you are willing to house homeless individuals in your developments, then there's an avenue through this particular funding source as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our tax allocation districts. Again, they're geographically restricted, so it may not apply to everyone that's in this room, depending on where you are located. But we do have, of course, the East Side tab was talked about a little bit earlier, with Elena, and then we also have funding in the West Side tab, which is English Avenue, Vine City. We have some programs that are focused in the Perry Bolton area, so over in West Highlands, as well as Campbellton Road and Hollowell. And so these are programs that we are being very intentional about. Some of them will fill large gaps, and these are all grant programs. So write that word down, grants. Grant and equity is what you guys like. That's what, so if anybody, if you know nothing about housing and financing, always ask for grants and equity. Isn't that right, Elridge? Because that's what he asks for every time he comes. Isn't that right, Ty Rochelle? That's what you ask for every time you come. So, so if you know nothing else about this, grants and equity. That's free money that you don't have to pay. And also, I see David there too. So those are the things that people like to talk about. So if you know nothing, that's just throw those terms around and they would think you know everything you need to know about affordable housing. And so again, not going to go into a lot of details about each one of the programs, but suffice it to say that we will have a special session just for that and can walk you through that. And then we have a couple more programs. I talked a little bit about the Vine City lease purchase and then the Beltline Increment. But what I wanted to really just end with is just kind of highlighting a couple of projects that, and these are some of our faith-based projects that we actually provided funding to. We've created almost 1,000 units of affordable housing over the past 5 years through many of the projects you'll see here. And so I'm gonna kind of roll through these really quickly, but you know, one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this is just to say a couple things. First, that you're gonna need a partner. And the reason you're going to need a partner is because this is really tricky stuff, and you know, a lot of these funding sources are government, and if government didn't make it complicated, we wouldn't be government. So you're going to need somebody who understands all this. So we are just living up to our title with a lot of the programming and the nuances of those programs. So you are going to need partners, and so what you'll see in each one of these deals is not only was a church involved, but there was also a development partner who had the expertise and knew about affordable housing and layering that was a part of that transaction. And so the first one is, of course, Wheat Street Towers, 208 units. That is a deal that was done with both, with Wheat Street Baptist Church as well as the Benoit Group. 208 units, all affordable, and they have a contract, so every tenant that lives there will pay no more than 30% of their income towards housing. That's what we like to see. Legacy at Vine City. This is done through a joint venture with Higher Ground Empowerment Center as well as Beverly Searles Foundation. In Vine City, 105 units. The development cost was about 19.8. It's a beautiful project. If you've not seen it, please drive past it. It is absolutely amazing. And then we have Big Bethel Tower, great project downtown Atlanta. And a lot of these projects, Big Bethel and Wheat Street in particular, was really preservation, preserving the units and the affordability that was already there. But it came at a cost. I mean, this one alone was $32.8 million. Just to be able to go in and rehab those units and basically make them, take some of the functional obsolescence out of them. And then True Light Haven. And this is a joint venture with True Light Baptist Church as well as National Church Residency, new construction. It is beautiful. If you've not seen it, please drive by and see it. It is absolutely amazing. And it is close, near and dear to my heart. I'm a graduate of Turner High School, so for those that, without dating themselves, know. And this is around the corner from Turner High School, so this was what we saw this all day, every day, and so this was what we used to call the old Flintstone Apartments that were there. And it was demolished and turned into this beautiful project that you see. And then Big Bethel Village. Big Bethel Village is a project that is on Fairburn Road. It's been there for a while. It is actually adjacent to what was the old Southside Medical Center, but provides affordable housing for seniors, about 120 units there. And then I always end with this slide because I want people to put in perspective who we're talking about. When we start saying that we serve people that 30% of AMI and 60%, people have no idea what we're talking about. And so I always try to put this in here so you can have an idea of the people we're talking about and who we're trying to serve. But again, we will have a session that dives deep into this, but we'll be available to answer any questions. Vicki has her purse and her checkbook, so we'll see what happens there. So anyway, but Reverend Smith, you want to come up and get us ready for the next session, which is we got to do a little redecorating here and a little changing around for the next session. So, and I wanted to bring, I was actually going to joke with Reverend Smith when he said that I was David Arnold, because prior to this, I spent a lot of time with the mayor's communication person, making sure that they got my last name right. He's like, is it Luca or Arnold that you like to go by? It's like Arnold. Then I had my friend mess up the first name, but, but it's fine, so it's not a problem. But thank you, we'll be around if you have any questions.
Not messing up any more names. But now we're going to move into the next section of this, in Joshua Humphries from the City of Atlanta's Office of Housing and Community Development, and he will preside over a panel, two panels actually, one from a beginning project and one from a project that was completed, just again to make all of this information sink just a little bit better and make it apply just a little bit better.
Well, we're really excited, everyone, to jump into the panel discussions and start talking about actual projects that have happened and what it takes to realize them. And so to start with, we're going to bring it back home to Atlanta First United Methodist Church and the work that they're doing here that we're really excited about to realize affordable housing downtown and leverage a lot of land they have. So to kick things off, I'd love for each of you to just do kind of a short intro and talk kind of very briefly about how you're involved in this project, because it's a whole team that it takes to make this happen.
Well, Josh, actually, this is a small part of the team that it takes to make this happen. Our lay leader is somewhere around here. Wayne Pierce, where are you? Wayne is in court. He was here, and now he's gone to court. This is a small part of the team, but I'm Jasmine Smothers. I'm the lead pastor here at Atlanta First United Methodist Church in downtown Atlanta. We want to welcome those of you who are live streaming as well. And I am the team cheerleader. They may say different. But Elisa, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Elisa Smallwood. I am actually the trustee chair for the church, and I happen to be the co-chair of the church's development task force. I am intimately involved with this project.
And why don't you tell them what you do in your day job, too?
In my day job, I am the Chief Development Officer for Holy Cross Health in Silver Spring, Maryland. Mm-hmm.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Block. I am the Director of Development for Evergreen Real Estate Group, and we are the Atlanta First United Methodist Church's development partner on their 360 Peachtree redevelopment initiative.
Good afternoon. My name is Aldrich Lynch. Okay. My name is Aldrich Lynch. I am the development consultant for the church. So I basically interpret and translate developer speak for the church and the trustees.
Good afternoon. I am Terry Lee, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Atlanta Housing.
Cool, thanks. And if you didn't catch this is the same Terry Lee that Don was talking about. Well, before we get...
And I don't have any money in my purse either. What?
Well, actually, I don't even know why we have you on this panel anymore. Well, before we get into some questions about the deal and kind of where you're all working on things, Pastor Jasmine, could you give a little bit of an overview of the project and kind of where you're at today?
Yes, I came back to Atlanta First to be the senior pastor here almost 6 years ago now. And when I came back, one of the first things that the church leadership team said was, we want to do something to really impact our community. And so we started discerning about what that might be and how we might impact our community for good. And our bishop invited some leaders to participate in an initiative called MLab. And she invited us to dream God-sized dreams. And we had to make a pitch about something that would literally change the life of the congregation and community that we serve. And so I got in a corner and prayed and talked to some of my colleagues and called my folks back home and said, what are we going to do? And the Lord led us to affordable housing. You are sitting in a sanctuary that was built in 1903. Wow. This church is celebrating 175 years this year. And amen, amen, Mr. Bill. And this is actually the first Protestant church in Atlanta. And it helped launch all of the other Protestant denominations here in Atlanta. And it has a proud history of impacting this city for good. So in 175 years, we thought it was time to do something more. And we sit on 2.8 acres, which is very unusual right here in the middle of the city of Atlanta. So we got our then district superintendent, who is here with us today, the Reverend Dr. Bernice Kirkland, who, stand up so everybody can see you. Thank you. She has recently been appointed to help churches, United Methodist churches, do development. So we are thrilled to have her with us today. And we all got together and went to see another project in Miami, Florida, Miami First United Methodist Church, and came back and said, we can do this. And we issued an RFP, a request for proposals for developers, that named a God-sized vision. That this project would be so big that without God, it is bound to fail. And let me tell you, it is so big that without God, Vicki, it is bound to fail. And God is showing up and showing out in a mighty way. And we're so grateful for all of those who have come before us to speak to you today, because they have been the partners who have helped us to get this far on the journey.
Cool. Thanks for that. And could you talk a little bit about the development partners and the way that maybe you or Lisa, how you brought the team together and made those decisions?
Oh, well, you know, so much of this is technical, and we've talked a lot about an RFP, and, you know, we went through that whole process. Evergreen was one of the developers that came to visit the church. But I want to talk about how we knew this was the right partner. And I don't know if you know this, but I actually was able to go see a few of the projects that Evergreen had done in Chicago. And the last project that we saw on that cold day, David dragged me around the city of Chicago, was one where they had built affordable housing atop a public library. And it was impressive. But what he doesn't know is when I knew this was the right partner was when the property manager came out and grabbed him in a bear hug. And they talked about their families and what was going on. This wasn't a developer that was going to build it, wash their hands, and say goodbye. I knew then that he was responding not only to this project for the project's sake, but to the mission. And we talked a lot in the RFP about highest and best use, but also highest and best mission. And so it was a match when I saw that they were in it for the long haul. I knew we had the right partner.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about in the leadership team was that our partner had to hold our values, our core values, and understand the vision of the church. And every Sunday morning, I see our Atlanta folks out here, every Sunday morning, we stand up and we say that Atlanta First exists to
worship, serve, grow, and engage.
They didn't know I was going to do that. But if it doesn't do that, if it doesn't worship, serve, grow, or engage, we don't do it here. Period. We saw in the response to the RFP the ways in which we could worship God, serve people, grow together, and engage the city of Atlanta and beyond through and with Evergreen.
And could you talk a little bit about the timing? Like how long from the time that you started thinking about this to getting even to RFP?
I was telling Dr. Kirkland earlier that, you know, we were walking on a beach in Miami in 2018 when it was a little germ of an idea. And so this is 2022. Yeah. So, and we are at the beginning.
We're in the race.
Yeah, right.
So on the screen, you actually see a picture that I drew of the dream, of the God-sized vision on the plane back from Miami, of what this parcel might look like. Airplane napkins are awesome for dreaming, y'all. And then we put it on a map.
Very cool. Terry, I'm going to kick to you next. When you were in your role as Chief Housing Officer, I know you worked with Atlanta First United Methodist. Can you talk a little bit about what that relationship was like and kind of working alongside a faith community as they were making these decisions about their future?
No, absolutely. Well, first of all, when you give me a microphone, I think I'm supposed to sing.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, it's either you gotta have the money or you gotta sing. You gotta choose which one. So.
Okay. You're right. I have held multiple roles, so a singer would also join in. You know, I had the awesome opportunity in 2019, so it's amazing that you said 2018, to meet Pastor Jasmine. And it was in my capacity as Chief Housing Officer. And she and Kevin Hope scheduled a meeting. Didn't know Pastor Jasmine. I knew of Kevin. And when we went into the small conference room, you know, she had the smiling face, and she basically said, we're going to build affordable housing on Peachtree. And it'll be affordable housing for people who really, really need it. And when we talk about affordability, I think sometimes we get confused, because at the end of the day, it's what people make versus what housing costs. I mean, it's just real simple. What people make versus what housing costs. And when Pastor Jasmine said that, I wasn't taken aback, but what I thought about was that scripture, is there anything too hard for God? And because to do affordable housing on Peachtree is hard. to do affordable housing in Atlanta is it's just very difficult. But right here on Peachtree, it's really, really hard. And the advantage that I felt that the church had is that they actually own the land. But what I also recognized is that in order to make this happen, you would have to have a significant engagement and involvement from the public sector. And that's not just the city. So in my role that I have left now, I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Atlanta Housing, but when I was Chief Housing Officer for the city, the one thing that was really critical and important is that developers did not have to run around trying to figure out what to do. And for the faith-based initiative, Josh, I'm gonna challenge you all that we make sure that the faith-based community don't have to run around and find out what to do. We should bring everybody to the table. So what we did, we actually convened a meeting with folks from city planning, their design group with Invest Atlanta. We had Alan there, as well as myself. And I didn't have anybody from Atlanta Housing. I guess I knew I was going over there. But we actually came to the church. We came, met with some of the trustees, Pastor Jasmine Elise was here, and we actually talked about what the vision was and how we as public sector agencies could be able to invest and partner with the church. Our team even helped with some of the RFP components through the design group, and that's what government's supposed to do. Government is supposed to be that facilitator and partner to help make transactions like these take place and happen. So we were sort of at the forefront. Now, on the back end of the transaction, you know, one of the things I would say is that Atlanta Housing has a huge opportunity to be a participant in this deal. Dawn talked about that as development entities, you want to ask for, I think you said grants and equity. I'll add another term to that. You want rental subsidy. Okay? Everybody say it with me. Rental subsidy. Say it like you believe it. Rental subsidy. Okay, thank you. And let me tell you why that's important, right? When you talk about affordability and when we're talking about helping people, Dawn had a slide that showed these incomes. The folks that are going to be able to benefit from these units, quite honestly, are probably going to make about $24,000. And if you just do the math, at 30% of their income, they can only afford a rent of $600. There is nowhere in Atlanta with a rent for $600. Nowhere, okay? If you think about it, if rents for a one bedroom are at $1,800, $1,900, and somebody at making $24,000 can only pay $600, that's a huge significant gap. That rental subsidy is what will come in and help pay that gap. And that's a partnership through Atlanta Housing. Under our program, we provide what we call housing choice vouchers, either tenant-based or project-based rental assistance. In this instance, and I have to believe that an application will be coming soon, we will be getting an application from the development entity for project-based rental assistance. And that's where Atlanta Housing will actually go into a contract with the development entity and the property itself and provide rental subsidy for a set-aside number of units. And so that's how we can participate on the back end from a financing perspective to make affordability happen. And if I could just take one more point of personal privilege, I absolutely love Pastor Jasmine. This is just how real, and I'm happy to see that you're here, but this is how real she is. Before she knew me, she saw my name in the newspaper and she started praying for me. And that is the type of leadership that we need helping to steer this type of vision. And so, Pastor Jasmine, I thank you for your prayers. I thank you for your friendship. I thank you for your honesty. Sometimes I don't want it.
I don't want yours either.
But I just thank you, and I'm happy to be a part of the team and a part of the partnership to make this happen. And I'm looking forward to Atlanta Housing being a part of more of these discussions, but also helping more of the faith-based community realize their vision to develop affordable housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
So I want to tell you guys that we would not be here today if it were not for Terry Lee and for her investment in helping us start well. I have no idea how to build affordable housing.
I am a clergy person with a master's of divinity degree. I'm not an architect. I am not a builder. I am not a fundraiser like Elisa. I'm not a developer. And we would not be here today without Terry Lee. And so I have to thank you for that. We owe you a debt of gratitude. We love you, and we are grateful for you, and we're going to keep praying for you. And Dr. Kirkland, she's a good Methodist.
Pastor Olu Brown, Impact Church.
Well, you didn't sing, but I think that was a pretty good answer anyway, so we'll forgive you for it. So David, I want to shift over to you next. As a developer coming into a project, talk a little bit about what you're looking for when you're considering a faith-based housing opportunity and how you make those decisions about deciding to respond to an RFP and enter into this kind of partnership.
Sure. Yeah, so I first came to this very sanctuary about 2.5 years ago. It was in September of 2019. And after all of this visioning work that Pastor Jasmine and Elisa and the Atlanta First team had done, they wrote this RFP, and I heard about it. And so my very first time down here, I came down here from outside the perimeter. I think Chicago's outside the perimeter. And so I didn't know Atlanta, but I saw the vision and I saw the passion. And I think one of the things that was most compelling to me as a developer about being down here for that initial meeting was that, frankly, I was a little bit intimidated by it. That when Pastor Jasmine talks about a God-sized vision, she means it. And that is both a challenge, but also a puzzle for a developer who feels like, and we as an organization, and me personally as a developer, feel like our job is to deliver high quality housing that does something good for the communities where we work. And housing is enough of a challenge, but if we're also talking about building a new home for the Atlanta First Day School, which is part of what we're proposing here. So a school that's based right here at Atlanta First United Methodist. Or building some additional retail space, half a block from the Civic Center MARTA station in an area that probably meets the technical definition of a food desert in downtown Atlanta. And the perennial challenge of finding enough places to park for all of that. It's a puzzle, and it engaged us as a company, me as personally, and it inspired us. And we thought, okay, if we can figure out how to do this, this is a really wonderful opportunity. And I think that is what we look for as developers when we're looking to our partners. We have the technical stuff. All of the information that Dawn was showing and that Terry talks about, we know all of those tools, and we've used all of those tools. But what is the secret sauce in any successful development is the vision and the passion. And when developers try to bring that vision and passion themselves, sometimes it doesn't go well because it's not necessarily coming from the heart of the community. It's coming from us, and we may be passionate about what we do, but ultimately the community is not necessarily looking to the developers for that vision. They're looking for the community to develop the vision by itself. And I saw that here at Atlanta First. And to me, that's where I knew that this project would be ultimately successful. So I think that was the thing that inspired us to put together our proposal, and I've been proven right. So I'm Jewish, and so I think I have a little bit of a different approach to faith, maybe, than some of the people in this room, but I am learning the Methodist way of faith through this project, and I am learning that sometimes I have to have faith, even when, there's this problem and this problem and this problem. Well, okay, God will get us through, and sure enough, we're sitting here today and we're still moving, so.
Thanks for that. So, Arch, I'm going to go to you next. Talk about, as a group of people thinking about maybe this is something they want to consider. What are some things you wish you knew before, if somebody had told you, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, what are things you wish you knew and would maybe do differently this time around?
Sure. Thanks, Josh. So I think I'm gonna break this up into two answers. One is for the congregations or houses of worship that are here on Peachtree in a very dense area. I'm going to answer that one first. That's similar to the 360 project. So I would say the complexity of the program that we have here, and every time you move, let's call it a wall. Let me make it very practical. Every time you move a wall, it has a ripple effect. And one classic example is, the Atlanta Day School is accredited, right? It has certain rules and regulations that it has to follow. And therefore, when you move that wall, all of a sudden there's a ripple effect on, that's not enough space for the exit. The staircase has to be wider than this. Now you are affecting the structural. So I say that to say, when you have a very complex project, you need to take into account the more you have in the programming, the harder it is to make that puzzle piece come together. And I'm gonna take a second just to point out that the lead architecture firm is here, and Moody Nolan, we have a couple of representatives here. I think every time we have a meeting with them, I think they have to take a mental health day the next day. So I will say that applies to anybody who's in an area like Peachtree where you have a 35 FAR, which means essentially the city allows you to build really high, a lot of density. Now let's move to the second part, which is, some of the churches that may be further afield where it only makes sense to do 4 stories or 3 stories of stick surface parking. That's a totally different situation. One of the things I think those organizations early on should be looking at is not only the people in your congregation who are coming and are saying we are having a hard time paying rent where we live. You are probably in those conversations, but also the people right around the land that you own, be it the physical church land that has excess land, or a lot of churches have bought up land in other areas. Just make sure that you understand where your asset is, what the rents are, and what people are paying in that area, right? So you want to be able to put a project on the ground that reflects that community, kind of like what David was saying, and reflects the reality that the people in that area are facing. There's a big difference between paying $600 a month in rent versus even just $800, that $200 differential. When you multiply that times the number of units in that project, times the number of years, it causes a totally different financing, capital stack, the amount of loan that project can absorb. So that would be my 2-part answer to your question.
No, thanks for that. I think that was really helpful. And those little different, those decisions make all the difference sometimes in making a project work, right? So I want to close on a question I'm going to ask you first, but I want to open it up to the group. This stuff is really hard to do. And I'm sure there were moments along the way where you were like, I'm not sure if this is going to happen or not. Can you talk about those hard moments and the decisions you made and what got you to this point? What propelled you forward?
Yes. Well, there was a global pandemic.
Oh, I have heard about this, yeah.
That happened right in the middle of this. And our lay leader, Wayne Pierce, came to me and he said, we will not stop. So whatever we have to do, we're going to keep going forward, and you get that developer on the phone and tell him that COVID doesn't mean anything to my God. It also, the financial plan is complicated. David's called it lasagna funding. I think the first time Terry looked at it, she was like, you have got to be out of your mind. And I said, yeah, but God. This is a project that has not happened in Atlanta ever before. And one of the reasons we chose Evergreen was because they've done complex projects like this in other places around the country. I've finally put the details on the screen for you to see how big this is. It's 2 towers, 320 units of housing, the first 3-bedroom units in downtown Atlanta so that families can finally live in downtown Atlanta. It's 192 affordable, 80 what we call workforce housing. In the faith-based community, we call it attainable housing. And 48 market rate units. Now, David's going to say, he's screaming, I hear him, but it might change. 2 schools to serve our city, including one, a partner that we are currently in negotiation with that serves only homeless families. Retail commercial space for this food desert. Parking, because, I mean, did you try to park today? And everywhere you turn, people say, this can't be done. And you do, you're just like, okay, forget it. We can take something else on, right? Mark Lawson, I see Mark Lawson from Redeemer. And it really is so big that it's bound to fail. But it's the people, we didn't do this internally. We put together a development task force that is meeting tonight. That's made of 1/3 community partners, 1/3 subject matter experts, and 1/3 of folks from our congregation. And we're committed to an Atlanta-based model, putting Atlanta to work. David and Evergreen are from Chicago, but everybody else is here in Atlanta. And this is going to bring so many jobs downtown. And that's what keeps you going, right? It's that this is not about you. This is not about even the church. But this is about God's people and the social impact for this city and beyond.
You asked about how long this took, and I keep going back to 2018. I can't help it. We have a bulletin board that's behind this door that you can't see. And we actually asked our members of our church and members of the community to write down their dreams for what they'd like to see on these 3x5 index cards. And when I see that a lot of those dreams are in this building, and so that has been what has kept me going, is remembering that those dreams on those cards and how important this is for our city.
So I think, Josh, your question was about have you had any moments of concern or doubt in this? And sure, there are always those moments, but we have managed to push past that. I guess for those of you who are looking to think about a project like this, to start a project like this, there is risk on both sides of a partnership like this. There is a risk for us as a developer, but there's also risk for the church. The risk for the church is time, is reputation, is that the congregation will waver from the vision, and there is money. And so the risk on the development side is, a significant amount of money. And so we all need to be, Pastor Jasmine spoke about shared values in this, and we need to make sure that the values of the development company that you partner with and your values are, as a church, are in an alignment. As a practical matter, we actually took advantage, I almost hesitate to say, of the time that we had at the beginning of COVID to negotiate our development agreement. So we spent, it was almost a year, I think, back and forth talking about what was important, and with a lawyer working out, okay, how do you actually put that into an agreement? And so the values that we have collectively are now contained in a joint venture legal agreement. And so managing that process and making sure your values are in alignment is really critical, because when you hit those moments of, ooh, we got some bad news about how this is going to work, or, we may need to make these changes here, you can weather those conversations a lot more successfully once you've had those conversations about values.
I didn't know if you were asking that question to me as well, but what I will do is I'll piggyback on.
I'll let you take the last word.
Okay.
Does that work for you? You're gonna close this out.
I'll make it very quick.
Go for it.
Just for all of the churches in here, I'll piggyback on the ability to have somebody pay for the technical assistance that you need up front is invaluable. You don't want to be spending money drawing stuff that can never be built. You don't want to spend money on lawyers who don't understand the tax credit program, who have never been in Terry Lee's office and understands all the tools that the housing authority brings or that the city brings via Invest Atlanta. So I will just leave it at that, but that resource is invaluable.
If I could, Josh, and I know we got to close. You asked if there was ever a time where we thought it was too difficult, and I think this goes across any affordable housing project, because it just does get difficult. And there are going to be times when, your partner may seem as if they're your enemy, right? But I think what I would encourage everybody to keep in focus is this is really about the people, and is how do you make sure that you build an opportunity for somebody to have a chance. And that chance starts with, and I'm not telling you what I don't know, I'm telling you what I've lived myself. That chance is the opportunity for a stable environment and stable affordable housing. I may be the chief operating officer for Atlanta Housing, but I'm Terry Lee that grew up in a mobile home. And so I know what happens when you provide an opportunity for somebody to have stable, affordable, a foundation for stable, affordable housing, economic mobility, and equal access to education. And so let's just not forget about that when we talk about the building itself. It's really about the building of opportunity for people.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks so much. Thanks everyone on the panel. All right. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, you can just leave your, I guess maybe I'll take the clicker. Thanks. And give it up one more time. Atlanta First United Methodist Church and the work they're doing. We're now going to hear from Reverend Flippin and his team at Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church to talk about a project that is now complete and kind of what that's looked like for them and how that all came together. Much for joining us up here today and for being here at this event. We're excited to talk with you about a project that you spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears on to make happen at Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church. So to kick us off, I'd love to do kind of quick intros and kind of who you are and the role that you played in making that happen. And then Pastor Flippin, if you could talk a little bit just about the project itself and what it is and kind of who it serves and where it's located at in the city. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Shiante Harris, and I proudly serve as the staff pastor of outreach and community development for the Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church, in addition to the director of its nonprofit affiliate, the Grove CDC.
William E. Flippin, Senior Pastor, Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church.
I'm Phil Ellen. I'm the Executive Director of Georgia Communities. We're a nonprofit, and we're the partner with Piney Grove Baptist Church on the project.
And I'm Joe Collins, Vice President with Georgia Communities, Inc. as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just as Pastor Smothers was sharing, we as pastors are guilty of God-sized vision. We are the visionaries. And we will come to a group of people and say, we're going to remodel this entire church next week. Not realizing that you have to have funding, you have to have structural studies, and that's not even counting the church folk that will want it to stay like it did when their mother was here. And so when coming to the Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church, our church grew phenomenally in the first 3 or 4 years, and we needed a new facility then, a new church. But I thought, and I had seen this around the country, we built a family life center with a gymnasium that could serve the community, serve the members, and it was multi-purpose. And if anybody knew anything about black church folk, it was a bigger space to eat after funerals. And so it served many, many, many purposes, basketball and a gathering place. And we built it in 1996 when the Olympics were here. And of course, we paid it off in about 7 years. And I immediately said, oh, now let's go build a church. But church folks said, okay, you've drained us enough this millennial. And it was on hold. And I had the vision very early on also to motivate, to use the campus. We were not even expecting to have the 32 acres. The gentleman, when we were building the Family Life Center, would not give us a variance. We needed just 1 acre or just 100 feet. Those are things you better study before you start laying brick. But also, Citizens Trust Bank should have studied it too. And there we were building a building and couldn't get a variance. And the gentleman said that you'll have to buy all 30 acres or nothing.
Could you talk about what a variance is, just for the
Oh, okay. You can't build too close to someone else's property without their permission. And someone put on the board, in seminary, they didn't teach us any of this. So we had to learn the hard way by making a lot of mistakes. So we got 32 acres. And of course, that's where the church is. And so here's the preacher part. God moves in mysterious ways. And so there we were struggling to pay for that, and the building of the church was delayed. It just so happened that once the building of the church, new church started going up, we had spent 20 years studying, talking to different people, spending money, the zoning, the variance, the permits, the surveys, and our CDC at times was ready just to give up. Because we did not, and let me be honest, we did not have the full support of the leadership. They could not see the need for it. When I came to Greater Piney Grove, their pastor was 89 years old, and they were still taking up dues. Now, some of y'all don't even know what I'm talking about. $7 a Sunday for the men, $5 a Sunday for the women. So when I came in talking about tithing and etc., I still had that element that just, and honestly, they couldn't help it. A lot of those folk probably retired from their jobs not making more than $30,000, $40,000 a year at the most. So they couldn't understand you paying a preacher $60,000 and not paying Shiante all this money, And why you need all that? But they bought a house where their rent was $90 a month too. But anyway, the point is, we spent money and we were in debt and we were desperate. And so therefore, as Pastor Smothers says, she's the cheerleader. The pastor has to be the cheerleader, has to keep casting the vision, has to keep talking about the vision. Though the vision tarry, it shall speak and not lie. And so consequently, we ran across Georgia communities. Wendell Dandridge actually was with me at a National Baptist Convention and met them. Said, Pastor, I think you need to meet these people. We were desperate because we were hearing on one end, the church is giving you all $200,000, $250,000. Yep. So I was kind of in a catch-22. And we called them, and they came out. And then Pastor Shiante has been on board for 10 years, working on this from the very first day. Yes, sir. And finally, it was realized. But we thank God for this group. We thank God for our CDC board. Because there were times that some of the people really looked at them as the enemy of the church. Y'all are separate. Y'all got your own. And it did happen now. When we did receive money to lease the land, they started fussing that the money should go to the church. And that went on for about, 6, 7 months, didn't it?
It's probably still going on now.
Okay. You know, we've been funding this all the time. This should be our money, you know. And so anyway, the people are there. They're happy. What I like about Georgia Communities, and Pastor Harris will come next, is the fact they will not work with you if you're not involved in the community, your church. And we had a track record of working in the community. And we will have a garden very soon. We take communion over there every month. When we have food drives, we make sure they get food. On and on I can go. Someone today was just talking about they want to do a Toastmasters from our church in the building. And so we are involved in the in the people that live there. And it's a very wonderful place. And so we just thank God for the opportunity. We have about 12, 15 acres that we're kind of landlocked off Fayetteville Road. And so we're trying to figure a way to get to that. But when I built the last building, I said, that was my last erection. Baptist humor.
So Pastor Harris, we're going to go to you next.
Yes, that is my pastor. We want to make sure you all are awake, who's here. But as Dr. Flipper mentioned, one of the beauties of our development is that we did establish a nonprofit arm. And so the church was not liable for anything. And so we did develop, in '94, a Higher Plains Community Development that in 2009 changed its name to the Greater Piney Grove Community Development. Again, the church was never online in terms of any kind of debts. And so, of course, the nonprofit was built to be able to handle outreach opportunities and the development without harming the church. And I'll say that because we had a number of options that we explored with the land. One point, we were looking at assisted living, private pay assisted living, but we realized that our persons couldn't afford it. And then we also looked at it was the development program that allowed foreign investors to come from overseas to develop EB5. There it was. But when they had the bombing, the race bombing up in, I want to say it was Boston, they stopped their program. And we now see it as a blessing because we were able to eventually be able to work with Georgia Communities. And so again, the blessings that the church had is that had a separate entity that developed the property. So we were the ones that took the brunt because we were a part of another a development that we did have some back and forth and some issues with an attorney. And so we were on the line big time forward. But God worked it out that when we met our current partners, Phil and Joe as we call them, they were ones that came with a wonderful program that involved the community, that involved the church, that put together a 5-year plan for community development. We knew through God that that's who we need to work with. And so we have our issues, but we're grateful that we were able to develop a 70-unit development that opened up January 2020. We were supposed to have a grand opening in March 2020, and guess what? COVID came. So we are excited that we was full capacity. We have about maybe 7,000 persons on the waiting list, and so that just shows that affordable housing is needed for all, but especially for seniors. And so we're grateful for the opportunity and looking forward to doing some other development, hopefully with our development partners. And so I'm going to throw the ball over to Phil and Joe, who can speak more about their involvement with Georgia Communities.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Oh, we're good. We're all good.
Thank you.
All right.
Also, this is an
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll try not to be so excited.
If they weren't awake,
you're awake now.
They're awake now. So Phil, can you talk a little bit about when y'all came into the process, how you kind of decided this was right for Georgia Community?
Sure. Just a little bit brief background on us. Over 20 years ago, I started doing this. My father, a Baptist minister, started the nonprofit with the same vision that Pastor Flippin had. He and Pastor Flippin, I wish they would have got to know each other when he was alive, but they were very much cut of the same cloth. Big visions and want to do lots of things for the community. And so we're really excited over the years that we have been able to partner with Piney Grove. The vision, started with actually Pastor Flippin. I mean, we were the mechanism to help put this all into place. Right. And one of the things I would encourage you as you look to do a project like this, choosing your partner, I think we've already talked about it before, that is a key thing. I'm not going to run Pastor Flippin's church. It's not going to happen. And he doesn't need to know all the things that were put on the board. I know that's overwhelming to even look at some of these terms and just all these different things. It's 20 years is not enough time even to know all these things. So choosing your partner and choosing how to go about planning and going about how to make a project work is huge. And how you choose that partner, you could talk to us about that, talk to Pastor Flippin how they did that, the church here. But having someone that's really about your mission and vision. Our mission has always been more about, it's not about sticks and bricks, it's about community and the programs we have, from our internship program to the farm to the health incentives that we do. All that's about impacting not just the seniors that live there, but the whole community. We want to see it as a leveraging a tool that'll impact the whole place. And the vision they have here is a great example of that, how they're impacting with the school and the community. So I know that church mission and vision can line up with a developer, and you can find someone that will help you accomplish what your larger goal is. So we're excited about that. We came to the project, like I said, and Pastor Flippin, they grilled us pretty hard about who we were and want to know all about us. And then we launched this journey together, and it's been a journey. It started back in 2016, so it's been a long time. And I would say we are friends. We are this. I consider him my second pastor after my pastor down the street. But he is a dear friend to us, and those relationships mean something. Yes. And I think that's something you need to look at when you choose someone to work with you.
And Phil, as you talk about ministry, that is the role that the pastor must continue to lift up when you're talking about money, grants, architecture, is that we are doing this for ministry's sake. And sometimes people can lose sight of that when you're talking about millions and buildings and programs and grants. We don't know how to put it together, but we know it's ministry. It's to serve the people. And for them to have a better life has already been said. The young lady from the housing touched my heart. My father made $5 a week too much for us to live in the projects. And we didn't live in the best of neighborhood, but there was some folk that gave me opportunity. And that's why I reach back and make sure that I touch those people, that they can have the opportunity to live a good life, go to a safe school, and be productive. That's what it's all about.
Could you talk a little bit about, because I think that's a really important point for this room, how you broach that topic with your congregation and making those decisions and bringing your congregation along with this idea and discerning together that this is the way, this is our ministry, and this is what we have a responsibility to do.
Sure. People can be selfish too, so let's be honest. I don't care how they love the Lord. You would have to find some people in your church that needed the housing and let them push it. I'm tired of living here. I can't afford my taxes. It's not safe. People have selling drugs. So you have to find people who will push that and say, I want a safe place for my mother to live or for me to live. And the idea of when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was out of doors, you gave me shelter. I mean, that has to be a theme that is preached, lived out, demonstrated over and over and over again, so that those that may not understand it will at least say, I'm tired of hearing it, let's do it. But you have to be that visionary. We keep at it.
I know for the Grove, Pastor also teaches about legacy and leaving a legacy. And so he was very intentional about showing how we're going to leave a legacy in the East Lake area. And so as we were developing and building our new church, a worship center, we were very transparent into the plans then. We made presentations. We made sure the developers were there. We made sure that questions were answered. We had sessions with our members. And so we pretty much carried that over into developing our senior housing, answering questions, making sure that there was nothing that seemed dirty. pretty much. And so even when it came to the community, we were at senior centers. We went to senior centers because, again, we have senior housing, 55 and up, senior housing, 70 units. And so we made sure that it was what they wanted. We didn't want to build something that they didn't want to be a part of. And so we went to senior centers, held sessions there, listened to them, as well as our seniors, to make sure that we had a product, we had housing that was tailored towards what they needed and what they need, in line with what the ruling of development and whatnot was. And so Pastor, again, taught about legacy. We want to make sure we had a lasting legacy in the East Lake, Atlanta area.
Oh, thanks for that. So talking about senior housing and the need for that, Joe, one of the things that I know this project worked on was how to have units set aside for parishioners. Can you talk a little bit about how you set the deal up and kind of made decisions so that you could secure housing for folks in the congregation?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a very practical question for churches interested in developing affordable housing on your campus. If it's anything like our structure, and the chances are that it will be, the vast majority of new rental affordable housing is done through government programs to provide both debt but also equity in the form of the low-income housing tax credit program. So one thing that you need to keep in mind and expect going in is that this is a public-private partnership, where as part of going into that, you will need to understand that there are going to be some components that you'll have to give up some control over. There's investors involved, there's government compliance issues involved, and there's fair housing issues involved. And that's something we have to spend a lot of time educating folks on, so that you know going in and aren't disappointed on the back end about some of these compliance issues. And so in terms of setting aside units, because of fair housing, you cannot reserve the units for folks that go to your church. Right. And I don't think most of you would necessarily want that.
And we made that clear to the congregation too.
Right. And the Pine and Grove was excellent about understanding, asking good questions, and communicating to its own congregation so they weren't disappointed in the final product. But it is on your campus, and so there's an awareness of things that can be helpful. There's announcements in churches, there's opening up of a pre-leasing process. So there are ways, just by good communication, that folks you serve can get a great opportunity to enter that housing unit. But keep in mind, there are, it's not just the reserving housing, it's also design questions, all sorts of structural implications of getting into the partnership you would potentially be getting into.
Cool, thanks for that. I got one last question for each of you, and I'll start with you, Joe, and we'll come back. If you had advice for this room, for someone that's thinking about taking this on, what's one piece of advice that you would give?
You've heard it many times over, but just doing your homework on how affordable housing development works, not to become an expert, but just so you can be a good steward of your church resources, and talk with folks you trust, other pastors and leaders who have gone down this road, to find your partner. Georgia has a great set of developers and potential partners. And I think if you'll do a little research on who's gotten funded successfully, their imprint in Georgia, along with your references from people you know and trust, that is probably the most important first step you all can make as you head down this road.
I would just say, know this is a long process, that this is not going to happen overnight. This is something like Pastor Flippin did for years. Prep and prepare the church and kind of get your structure laid out to how you're going to do that. Educate yourself. But you've got time. You need to know that this is not a, like I said, we started in 16. And so we started a long time ago working on this process. I'm sure this church here did the same. So just know that it's going to take a while, but just be patient.
Be willing to share what you've learned with other churches. Don't be selfish about the information and people that they can contact. Phil and Joe, we had a meeting at This Is It, and about 35 pastors came. But the problem is they didn't have startup money. And then, of course, getting through the government But there are people out there that are ready and want to work. So I'll just say, you asked me one thing, write the vision, make it plain.
Ditto to all, be prayerful, be realistic. Know your county commissioners and your county personnel, know them very well.
Right.
As they said, research. But again, I cannot stress prayer. I cannot stress prayer, praying about what you do, who you work with, what you want to see happen. Walking the property and praying, there's still power in prayer. And so making sure that you do just that. I wish that you really have to be intentional, especially if you're a house of worship, because you're going to have things that will come up that will deter you, that will also scare you.
Yeah.
But I do believe God brings persons and people together just like he brought Phil and Joe to us. And so ditto to all that was said, please pray.
That's
be
right.
intentional in prayer. Know your county commissioners and persons in position.
Right.
And watch God work.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, let's give it up for Greater Pine Grove Baptist Church and what they've done. Thank you all very much. Yeah. So Pastor Jasmine's going to come up and close us out. But as she comes, just we want to thank you all for being here. This is the beginning for us as something that we're really committed to. And over the next few weeks, you'll hear about follow-up events. As Don mentioned, we really want to commit to providing as much information and connecting you with the resources that are available for you to make the decision that works best for you and your church and your house of worship on this work. So Pastor Jasper's going to come up and close us out. And thanks again for having us here today.
We're so grateful and glad and feel honored that you were here with us today. You've heard it over and over again, it takes a team. And this is my chief teammate right here, Mr. Wayne Pierce. His grandchildren. You can take your mask off if you want. Wayne's grandchildren are the 4th generation in this church. Wayne is the lay leader here, but he is the pastor's chief cheerleader. And so much of this doesn't happen without a team that works together and that perseveres together. And so we can't close this out without you getting to see Wayne and me getting to publicly thank Wayne for even this, because even this event would not have happened without Wayne's work and Wayne's support. So Wayne's also our good lawyer.
I'm actually Jasmine's lay follower.
Althea was here today too, who is one of Atlanta's absolute best affordable housing lawyers, and she's another one which we would not be sitting here today without her, Althea Broughton. So I have to, just a moment of personal privilege, I need to thank our hospitality team. There are folks here today who have made sure that you have had what you need and have made sure that the building was open and clean and warm and cool and ready to welcome you, and I need to say thank you to them. So hospitality team, if you'll just wave where you are so that we can thank you so much. Y'all, we have the most incredible staff here, the most incredible staff. I see Mary Jackson back there. Mary is our operations director. Nothing happens here without Mary. Jay Horton is our director of community engagement. And I couldn't do my job unless Jay was here making sure that all of the details were being done. You cannot see Stephen Colley, who is our media manager. He has made sure that, yes, Stephen. He is in the TV room downstairs. He's been live streaming for us, for folks who couldn't be here in person, and making sure that all the screens worked and the sound works and all that. And so I need to say thank you to Stephen, to our security team, to our sound team, and to all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And you got to experience this beautiful organ and the piano. Mrs. Rowena Denard is our director of music and worship, and she is just incredible. Amen. So our mayor gave us a charge. He says he wants 20,000 units of affordable housing in 8 years. And he wants 2,000 of those from the faith-based community. But then Don said we could do better than that. And I agree with Don Arnold and Invest Atlanta that we can do better than that. So, what's your part? What are you going to do? Who are you going to house? Who are you going to bring to the table? We're going to keep checking in with you. There are more roundtables to come. There are more in-depth sessions to come. This was just to be, to dip your toe into the water. And so we're going to dig deep and dig in together and see what God is going to do. I know this faith community can house Atlanta. Oh gosh, they're quiet, Wayne. You know how I get when they're quiet. I know this faith community can house Atlanta. So let's get to work. Let us pray. Oh God, we are so grateful for how you have met us in this place today. We're grateful, oh God, for all of the vision that you are launching and that you are growing and bringing to fruition. We're grateful, oh God, for all who have come today and who have had a God-sized vision in their bellies, shut up in their bones like fire, oh God. So we ask that you release it today, that you release it in the name of Jesus so that we might house the city of Atlanta, oh God, and so that we might become a model for other cities who are also in a housing crisis. Oh God, we ask provision for each and every faith community represented here today. We ask for provision for each government agency, for every architect, every lawyer, every developer, every builder, oh God. We ask that you would be in the midst of this all and that you would do what you do best, blow our minds. So God, take us from this place, but not from your presence. Bless us and keep us as we go about your work. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.